On this Wednesday night, Stellantis shifting gears. The auto giant moves some production from Canada to the U.S., leaving thousands of jobs on the line.
This is disrespectful and disgusting behavior by the company.
How American tariffs are being blamed and the threats of legal action. Another province turns Tory blue. The challenges ahead for Newfoundland and Labrador's newly elected premier. The pressure piling on Hamas to drop its weapons or else.
All hell breaks loose.
And the Canadian helping Israelis rebuild after the October 7th attacks. Plus, Blue Jays' pride invades Seattle.
They don't go this far that often, so they got to win today.
Our Eric Sorensen is in the Emerald City.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. A big automotive company is turning its back on Canada. Stellantis is abandoning plans to reopen its plant in Brampton, Ontario, and is instead shifting the manufacture of its Jeeps to the United States. Stellantis says it plans to invest $13 billion in U.S. auto manufacturing operations over the next 4 years. About 3,000 people worked at the Brampton plant before work was paused, so it could be retooled for a new production line. Now that production will be done in Illinois. Canada's Prime Minister says it's a direct consequence of U.S. tariffs. Ontario's Premier says he's disappointed.
You know, it's disappointing. They said they're going to keep Brampton open. I had a conversation with the president of Stellantis yesterday. He said, well, we're going to postpone it for a year. We're going to find a new model.
Stellantis does say 1,500 jobs will be transferred to its plant in Windsor, Ontario. But the auto industry, including Stellantis, gets billions in provincial and federal subsidies and tax credits to attract investment. And the Canadian government is now threatening to sue the company. Jillian Piper has our top story tonight.
Definitely shocking. This is not good news.
3,000 Canadian auto workers are the latest caught in the crossfire of the U.S. trade war.
This creates more uncertainty and more anxiety. They don't know if they're going to have a job to go back to now.
Stellantis shut down production at its Brampton, Ontario plant early last year for retooling, but vowed the closure was temporary. Now the company says it is shifting production of its Jeep Compass from Brampton to Illinois, writing, "Canada is very important to us. We have plans for Brampton and will share them upon further discussions with the Canadian government." The move is part of a plan to expand Stellantis production into the States by 50% over the next 4 years.
They make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit.
U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly said he wants auto production out of Canada, even in front of Prime Minister Mark Carney last week.
The United States was always giving everything. They gave everything to Canada. They would, let car companies leave here and go to Canada.
Carney not speaking about the decision, instead issuing a statement saying in part, "We have further made clear that we expect Stellantis to fulfill the undertakings they have made to the workers of Brampton." Ottawa has not said exactly what action it will take to hold Stellantis accountable, but in a letter obtained by Global News, the industry minister says the government will exercise all options, including legal.
Not only am I disappointed, it's completely unacceptable. So we will fight for these jobs.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford is urging Ottawa to retaliate against Trump.
We need to start hitting back and hitting back hard.
But Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says the damage has already been done.
The Liberals have poured billions of dollars into Stellantis, and we want to make sure that they get all that money back.
But there is concern more companies may move south to avoid the 25% U.S. tariff on Canadian autos.
We should be worried about all of our investments in this country if other companies pull the coward's way out like this one did.
U.S.-Canada Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc is in Washington for trade talks, Donna, where the auto industry will likely be top of the agenda.
Okay, Jillian Piper in Ottawa, thank you. After a late night counting the votes, people in Newfoundland and Labrador woke up to a new government. The Progressive Conservatives under leader Tony Wakeham swept out the Liberals, who had been in power for a decade. Liberal leader John Hogan conceded defeat after a long night of back-and-forth results. Heidi Petracek reports on the challenges ahead for the new premier.
Tony Wakeham flew in from his West Coast district and landed 2 cheers in St. John's, where he will eventually be sworn in as the next premier of Newfoundland and Labrador.
But as I say in basketball, nothing matters less than a score at halftime. and a lot of comeback we had.
The PC leader standing by his campaign commitments and his pledge to scrutinize the Liberals' proposed Churchill Falls deal with Hydro-Quebec, a renegotiation meant to bring in billions.
It needs to be sent to a completely independent review. Let's take the politics out of this. This is too important to future generations of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
I do think the timelines are tight to maintain an agreement with Quebec, if that's in the cards. I think what's going to happen politically in that province as well gives us a tight time frame.
Quebec's premier, who says he's still committed to the agreement, faces his own election next fall.
If you didn't vote PC, that's okay too, because we're also going to work hard for you.
A promise voters hope he keeps.
Hopefully, we see some good changes going forward then.
He got to do what he said he's doing, and he got to find a way to pay for it in a province that's pretty well bankrupt.
The people of Newfoundland and Labrador have spoken, and we will always respect their choice.
As for the provincial Liberals, John Hogan's loss means only one Liberal premier remains on the East Coast in New Brunswick.
You had a turn here of pretty epic proportions when you had the governing party essentially lose 8 seats, and against all the polls that have been coming out here.
While provincial progressive conservatives have differences compared to their federal counterparts, when it comes to messaging, we have seen similarities around cost of living concerns and fighting crime. And in this case, that appears to have paid off for Premier-designate Tony Wakeham. Donna.
All right, Heidi Petracek in St. John's, thank you. One of Canada's largest real estate companies says the housing market is tilting towards buyers. Royal LePage says Canada's aggregate home price was just over $816,000 in the third quarter of 2025. That's virtually the same as this time last year, just 0.1% higher. Montreal saw prices surge 5% year over year, while Vancouver and Toronto both dropped more than 3%. The pace of sales picked up in the summer and is expected to continue into 2026, especially if interest rates keep dropping. The first of the hostages who died in Gaza and whose body was returned was finally laid to rest in Israel today. Thousands of Israelis joined the family in a procession to the cemetery. The body of Guy Illouz was returned on Monday, more than 2 years after the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. Israel says one of the 4 other bodies returned this week is not that of a hostage. Returning them is part of the peace deal both sides agreed to. For every 1 dead Israeli hostage returned, Israel is supposed to return the bodies of 15 Palestinians. There are reports some of the bodies sent back to Gaza have been handcuffed and blindfolded. Redmond Shannon reports.
Hamas handed over 2 more Israeli hostage bodies on Wednesday, but the Gaza militant group now says it needs special equipment to locate any more. Just 9 of the 28 remaining dead hostages have been returned, and Israeli authorities say one of the bodies it received Tuesday was not that of a hostage.
We have to do the closure.
Siblings Dana and Elad told Global News they worry about when or if they will get the remains of their brother Dror. He was killed with his wife in the October 7th attacks.
This whole tragedy has to come to an end, that we can start and do our lives after everything.
In the other direction, Israel has returned a total of 90 Palestinian prisoner bodies to Gaza, some reportedly cuffed or blindfolded, all without identification. DNA testing capabilities are limited or non-existent in Gaza. Israel has threatened to restrict the flow of aid and keep the crucial Rafah crossing closed if the return of Israeli bodies doesn't speed up.
Hamas, the terror organization, is required to uphold its commitments to the mediators and return all of our hostages.
But it appears Rafah may now open Thursday, bringing help that can't come soon enough for 2 million Gazans. This displaced woman says she and her extended family of 36 don't even have blankets.
First, Hamas has to give up its arms. And second, you want to make sure that there are no weapons factories inside Gaza.
Speaking to CBS, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu threatened that, quote, all hell will break loose if Hamas doesn't disarm as part of the peace deal. But there is no plan in place for how and when Hamas would do that and hand over power, or how exactly a proposed international stabilization force would take over control of Gaza. Donna?
All right, Redmond Shannon in London, thanks. The 2 years since the Hamas attacks have been excruciating for those who lost loved ones, including some Canadians. They're now trying to rebuild their lives. Jeff Semple spoke with some of them about the strength and resolve that takes.
At this Israeli village near the Gaza border, the familiar drumbeat of bombs has been replaced with hammers. The entire community is under construction. Kibbutz Re'im was one of the first attacked by Hamas on October 7th. 7 Israelis were killed here.
This was my home.
This empty lot was Inbar Lilti's home. As Hamas broke in, he locked himself in this safe room and held it shut.
He shot it on the door, missed my hand by an inch, but it was a miracle.
He eventually snuck out a window and watched as Israeli soldiers fired back, shelling Lilti's home with several Hamas fighters inside.
This is my home.
2 years later, he and 400 other surviving residents have returned to rebuild, and they have a new neighbor.
So right there's bullet holes that were fixed.
After October 7th, this Canadian Israeli left Montreal and moved to Israel to volunteer.
I think that we win by rebuilding our life.
She keeps a knife under her pillow, but after the peace deal, she's sleeping easier.
For 2 years, we've been in this state of survival.
A short drive south, Hamas attacked another kibbutz and killed 33-year-old Israeli-Canadian Adi Vittel Kaplun. Her 2 young boys were taken hostage but later released.
My mission in all of this in 2 years is to keep Adi's memory alive.
Adi's mother has been sharing her story, but says the Canadian government and public aren't listening.
Why don't Canadians even know who the 8 Canadians are? Why? Because they don't.
She says watching the hostages' family reunions this week felt bittersweet. Israeli-Canadian Jonathan Zygan knows the feeling. His mother, Vivian Silver, was also killed by Hamas. She dedicated her life to fighting for peace. Zygan wasn't an activist before October 7th, but he now campaigns for a Palestinian state.
If my mother was killed in the context of war, in order for people not to pay this price, we need to create a context of peace.
He was deeply disappointed by the peace deal, which he says failed to address the root causes of the violence.
I'm worried that this deal is going to be an October 6th deal, that we will just try to go back and forget what happened in the past 2 years. You can't expect to get new outcomes if you're working in the same method.
The families of the Israeli-Canadian victims plan to gather at a cemetery here in Israel for a ceremony tomorrow. Because of a Jewish holiday, the official commemorations for the October 7th attack were delayed and are being held tomorrow. Donna?
All right, Jeff Semple in Tel Aviv. Thank you. The American Defense Secretary says he believes President Trump's peace through strength foreign policy strategy is working. Today, Pete Hegseth was speaking in Belgium ahead of a meeting at NATO. He said U.S. weapons bought by European countries will soon turn into what he calls capabilities for Ukraine.
Firepower. That's what is coming. We expect it is coming from NATO. And one part of that, of course, is Pearl, is the initiative where European countries buy U.S. weapons transferred to NATO for the fight in Ukraine to bring peace to that conflict.
President Trump has said that may include American Tomahawk missiles, which can strike deep into Russia. The Kremlin is warning that would risk widening the war. Trump will meet with Ukraine's president at the White House on Friday. A house swept out to sea. Coming up, how Alaska was battered by a powerful storm. The National Guard has been deployed to western Alaska after 49 remote coastal villages were battered by the remnants of a powerful typhoon. Multiple homes were ripped from their foundations and swept out to sea. One person is known to have died. At least 2 others are still missing, and about 1,400 people have been displaced. The intense storm hit the coastline on Sunday with hurricane-force winds and record flooding. Preparing for the situation was likely made worse by a lack of weather data because of the Trump administration's cuts to the National Weather Service. In Washington, journalists who cover the Pentagon are turning in their credentials, giving up access to the building rather than agreeing to abide by a new policy that media lawyers say criminalizes routine reporting. At least 30 outlets, including Reuters, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Associated Press, and all 5 major broadcast networks, including Fox News, rejected the Defense Department's new terms, which prohibit journalists from seeking information the Defense Department doesn't make available to them, even if that information is unclassified. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, a former Fox News host, calls the rules common sense. He says they protect national security. Press freedom groups call the policy unprecedented, warning it could limit reporting on how the U.S. military spends its budget of nearly $1 trillion in taxpayer money. Many American airports are refusing to play what the U.S. government calls a public service announcement about the impact of the ongoing U.S. government shutdown. The video features the Secretary of Homeland Security blaming Democrats for the shutdown. It's supposed to be shown at security checkpoints.
Democrats in Congress refuse to fund the federal government.
But multiple airports have declined to show it. They say the political content goes against airport policy and violates federal law. There have been staff shortages and disruptions at U.S. airports since the shutdown began October 1st. Many TSA agents are still working but not getting paid. Calling for justice ahead, why the chief of the Assembly of First Nations is asking for a change in policing. The Assembly of First Nations National Chief says reforms to First Nations and Inuit policing programs are long overdue. Speaking to a meeting of federal, provincial and territorial justice ministers today, Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak said the justice system is in crisis, with too many First Nations people dying during police interactions. As Heather Urix-West explains, grieving families want changes too.
These are when we went to the national finals.
Edith Wells' home is filled with happy memories of her second oldest son. John Wells was a champion in rodeo and beloved in his community. But just over a year ago, he died after an interaction with Calgary police.
His last words were, "I don't want to die. I don't want to die."
According to the Alberta Police Watchdog's preliminary investigation, in September 2024, staff at this Calgary hotel reported Wells to police as an unwanted person on site. Though he was not armed, when police arrived, Wells was tased, beaten, and restrained. Minutes later, he died. More than a year later, the Police Watchdog's investigation into Wells' death is still not done.
All I know is that I'm a grieving mother, waiting for answers.
The Assembly of First Nations National Chief says the Wells family is far from alone.
There's been too many deaths at the hands of police from right across the country, and it keeps happening. And why is it so prevalent towards First Nations people?
It's why, in a meeting that was not open to the media Wednesday, Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak asked Canada's Justice and Public Safety ministers to move ahead with a national inquiry on systemic racism in policing as part of a national First Nations justice strategy.
As I had reminded the Justice ministers today, it's now time for action, less words and more action and deeds.
He was only 42 and they killed him.
Last December, Edith Wells traveled to Ottawa to join the Assembly of First Nations in its call for justice reforms. Advocating for justice, she says, is the final gift she can give her son. Heather Urix-West, Global News, Calgary.
Uphill battle next. Can the Blue Jays flip the script in Seattle? The Blue Jays need to take care of business on the road if the American League Championship Series is going to head back to Toronto. They are down 2 games. This Canadian pilot, though, is not giving up, creating this Blue Jays logo while flying from Halifax to Debert, Nova Scotia on Tuesday morning. But after back-to-back losses, the Jays do face an uphill battle in the best-of-7 series. Eric Sorensen is in Seattle for the game tonight.
Go Jays, go Jays, go Jays. We got it. World Series, here we go.
It's something they're used to seeing in Seattle, a small invasion of Western Canadians when the Toronto Blue Jays come to town. This year, many Canadians stopped crossing the border over President Trump's threat to Canada's sovereignty.
We really didn't have it in our mind until Friday night.
But it seems the playoffs, so close to these distant but dedicated fans for a team that normally plays thousands of kilometers away, is an opportunity not to be missed.
And even though Seattle's only a couple hours from us in Vancouver, the Jays are still Canada's team.
Honestly, it's our only team that we have to cheer for in Canada, and it unites our country.
The fans, like the team itself, are looking to turn the series around tonight.
What do you think of their chances?
100%. Today's the day.
Winning the World Series is a rare accomplishment. Of the 4 teams remaining, even the Dodgers, who've been around since the 19th century, have only won the series 8 times. Toronto has won it twice, as any Blue Jays fan can tell you. The Milwaukee Brewers have never won the World Series, and the Seattle Mariners, who came into the league in the same year as Toronto, have never even been to the World Series. For all the baseball excitement north of the border, the intensity is matched in Seattle, a city starved for baseball glory.
We're talking nearly a half century without a World Series appearance. You cannot begin to describe the emotional catharsis it would be to even make it to the World Series.
This means everything to me. I've waited my entire life for this.
And how do they feel about the swarming flocks of Blue Jays here?
I don't mind that Canadians are coming in and buying some tickets to come visit their team, but you know, as long as they're prepared to lose.
As for the game, the Jays need a win, and their starting pitcher relishes the opportunity.
I love it. It's something to embrace, and ultimately it's just how many people get the opportunity to pitch in the playoffs in the ALCS, and what's going to be a great environment in Seattle, so I'm excited for it.
Trailing in the series 2-0, this is almost a must-win game for the Blue Jays tonight, or they will be on the brink of elimination. For Seattle, it is their dream to put Toronto away as quickly as possible to reach their first World Series. Donna?
All right, Eric Sorensen in Seattle tonight. Thank you. That is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada showcases New Bandon, New Brunswick, Saanich, BC, and Pine Lake near Gravenhurst, Ontario. Please keep them coming. Send your pictures of Canadian pride to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.